Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Unbottled Potential podcast. I am Amanda Kuda, your host. And today I want to have a vulnerable conversation about what I really needed when I quit drinking. And if you haven't listened to some of the earlier episodes of the show where I share a little bit about my story, I just want to clarify that when I quit drinking, which is coming up on 7 freaking years now, I quit drinking on January 1st, 2017. And it was really a difficult decision to make because I knew at the time that I did not have a problem. I didn't have a dependency. I didn't have an addiction. I wasn't someone who, quote unquote, qualified for rehab or 12 steps or any of the fundamental ways that we normalize quitting drinking. I knew that I wasn't a candidate for those programs. Now, obviously, all of those programs are very open. I know that I would have been welcomed into AA, but for me, it didn't feel congruent because going into the rooms and admitting that I had a problem with alcohol, or that I was powerless over alcohol, most specifically, didn't feel congruent. I knew that I could quit drinking. I just didn't have a model for how, because at that time, 7 years ago, there weren't people out there really talking about sober curiosity. Ruby Warrington had just kind of come on the scene. Holly Whitaker and Laura McCowan were doing their home podcast. That was, and Annie Grace had This Naked Mind, but most of those were from a recovery perspective. And it was really, really, really difficult to find sources and people who I aspired to be like, or who I resonated with their story. And it was really disheartening when I wanted to quit drinking because I remember scouring blogs, scouring the internet, and maybe I didn't do as deep of a dive as I could have, but I'm not going to say that because I did a pretty deep dive and I could not find anyone who really looked like me, who didn't have really a problem with alcohol, but they just were ready for it to be out of their lives. Most of the people who I was finding who were non-drinkers were, super duper religious, and that was part of their religious coming, and or they were in recovery and that was part of their recovery program, obviously, or they were parents and they needed to quit drinking to start a family, and none of those things resonated with me, so I felt really stuck. And in fact, I felt almost like it was impossible or unheard of to quit drinking without a problem or without some sort of other higher reasoning. And at the time of my sober curiosity, I was also in the midst of a spiritual awakening. I had started studying spirituality and I was leaning into teachers like Wayne Dyer and Gabby Bernstein and Marianne Williamson. And, specifically, Gabby Bernstein was really inspiring for me because she did talk about sobriety. In her book, Spirit Junkie, she talked about her decision to quit drinking and how it came from a rock bottom hitting her knees moment, which was super inspiring. And also, in my mind, my stubborn little mind, I coded that as, oh, I'm not quite the same as you because you went to this program that I'm not a good fit for. And so I reeled myself back out of the conversation. I talked myself out of the sobriety conversation because, again, this didn't fully match my story. And so, what I really wanted at that time, what I really needed was someone who was not talking about sobriety as this have to pursue path, this thing that you do because you have a problem, this thing that is going to be a burden, be with you, be hovering over your entire life, but a really empowering decision, and a decision that you could make to step into a better life for yourself, a decision that you could make to step into your potential, to step into a spiritual connection of your own understanding. And I was someone, as I said, as I was on that spiritual path, I knew that this life was possible because all my teachers and gurus were talking about it. And I had started to do the things, I had started to take the actions and check the boxes of what spirituality looked like. And so I was doing the meditations, I was doing the affirmations, I was doing the A Course in Miracles practice. I was doing all of these things that I'd added into the equation. And yet my life was improving, but I didn't feel it. I didn't feel this feeling of lightness, of connection, of support, of being in tune with my intuition. I just felt a little wobbly, a little off. And I kept asking, tuning into whatever connection I could find with my inner guide. And I kept saying, show me what I'm missing. Show me what I'm doing wrong because I'm checking all the boxes here. Why am I not manifesting? Why am I not, um, you know, having these intuitive hits? Why am I not feeling connected and supported to source energy all the time? And you know what? My inner voice, my inner guide, my intuition tuned in and it said something that I will never forget. It said, Amanda, we see you doing big things in the world, but we cannot see you doing them with alcohol in the picture. And some of you have heard me tell this story before, but it was probably one of the most impactful moments of my life. I was in the shower when I received this download and I fell to my knees and I couldn't catch my breath because I had been overcome with this, surge of energy. And it felt so true. And I knew in that moment that my relationship with alcohol had changed. And maybe you are not going to experience this kind of strange experience in the shower that I had, but what I want from you is, or want for you, is that if you've been experiencing this curiosity and you've been talking yourself out of sobriety, I want you to know that you are never given a curiosity. Your inner guide never places a dream or a desire or even a curiosity, as simple as it may be, on your heart if it's not something you are meant to explore. Okay. And so for me, I knew that if I didn't explore this curiosity to its fullest extent, that I was doing myself a massive disservice. And so when I committed to taking a break from alcohol, I continued to add on to that journey 30 days, 60 days, 90 days until I could feel something different. If I still felt like the same old me, I figured that the same old me who had just not been drinking, I figured that I hadn't quite yet learned the lesson. And in that 30, 60, 90, plus days, I started to feel different because I started to really sink into those spiritual practices. And I really started to experience the miracle of connection with my inner guide, my inner self, and with source. And it's not that you're not always connected to spirituality. It's not that you're not always connected to your inner guide, because you are, but there are certain things that we can do that can muffle that communication. And one of which is drinking alcohol. And here's how it works. Inside of your soul, inside of your body, your consciousness, you have two different voices. And this is directly from, well, not directly from, I'm not quoting, but this is conceptualized through A Course in Miracles, but through a lot of other spiritual teachings. So you have these two inner dialogues going on. One is the voice of the ego. And in spirituality and metaphysics, the ego is the voice of destruction, the voice of distraction, the voice of stress, fear, anxiety, separation. And that is a voice that is always going to convince you to stay stuck where you are and to stay in discomfort in some way. That is the voice that will convince you that there is not enough to go around, that you are different than, worse than, better than even other people. The voice of the ego is always going to convince you to stay in a state of upheaval and turmoil. Okay. And one of the ways it can convince you to do that is through drinking alcohol. Then there's this other voice. And it's a little lighter, it's a little softer, it's a little less persistent. And that is the voice of your inner guide. And your inner guide is the voice of connection, of love, of support, of possibility, of abundance. And that voice is always available to you. But what happens when we drink alcohol is we give the ego a megaphone, we amplify it, and we give the inner guide a 1990s flip phone used in a tunnel. Right. So there's still a connection available. It's just not going to be as crisp and clear as it would be if you were operating off of a brilliant, full connected signal. And so when I started to remove, for me, alcohol from the system, that voice of the inner guide started to amplify, amplify, amplify. And I was able to implement some practices, which I won't touch in today, but I will roll back to them and tell you how you can learn a little bit more about how we can befriend the voice of the ego and quiet it down to where it's not always running the show, to where we're not always responding from fear, but instead we're amplifying that voice of the inner guide so that we can respond from love. And that became so powerful. I became so in excited. I'm trying to find even the right word, with this feeling of love, possibility that had begun to radiate through me, that was always there, but that I was muffling down. And within the time period that I took a break from alcohol, again, which has now been 7 years, this is completely on accident at first. Within that time, during that time frame, that voice started to become so much louder and so much more clear, and it just felt good. It's a loving voice, it's a kind voice, it's an encouraging voice. And I, as someone who hadn't heard that voice, who had always been in self-judgment and worrying that I had to wait for the other shoe to drop, living from the voice of the ego, hearing that voice of calm, consistent support felt really good. And that became my priority, to tune into that voice as much as possible. And I knew that if I brought alcohol back into the picture, that I would lose access to that voice in some way. And so what I really did in my process is I started to create basically the methodology that I needed and that I wanted for myself because no one else was providing it. So I started taking all of the practices that I'd learned from my spiritual study, that I'd learned from, my master's degree in interpersonal communication, that I learned from all of these pieces of my life, these facets of my life that seemed not to make sense to one another or seemed not to fully connect. And I realized, wow, everything I've done on my journey up until now has created this path where I can create a program, as it were, for myself. And then I can share that program with other people. And so, what I really needed when I quit drinking alcohol was someone to tell me that it was not only possible, but it would be the most magnificent decision I would ever make, that it could be easy. It didn't have to be this burden to bear, this cross to bear, this admission of defeat, and that it could help me create a life beyond my wildest dreams. It could help me tap into a spiritual connection of my own understanding. It could help me manifest my deepest dreams and desires. And because no one was telling me that, I hesitated to believe it was true. And really, what I needed was to hear it from myself. And the lesson that I learned was that I am here right now to share this message. I am here to teach from this perspective. I am here to show up and be that teacher for anyone who needs what I needed 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And that was getting a little emotional. That was to say that there is so much more to life than the promises that alcohol has made to you. Not only the promises, but the lies that alcohol has told you, the things that you have been convinced that you cannot do, you cannot have, or you should not try to have without alcohol in the picture. It's all fake. It's all false. And there is so much more available to you than what you were able to achieve under the hazy veil of alcohol. And so, if that resonates with you, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad to be a teacher to you in any way. And I would also love to extend a invitation to you. If you feel what I'm saying, if you too feel like you are on the path of sober curiosity, of having a spiritual awakening, and you want to use sobriety as a springboard into possibility, into a deeper connection with yourself, into a deeper connection with the universe, into a deeper connection to possibility, to manifestation, I want to invite you into two different opportunities to extend that. Because I have really, really dove deep into this over the past 7 years, and I have something truly special to share with you. So, if you are just dabbling right now, I have a free program called Awakened Without Alcohol. It's a 5-day series that will really guide you through a little more of what I talked about today in a little bit deeper detail and help you to better understand how taking a break from alcohol and purposing to change that relationship can help you tap into a spiritual connection, a soul level connection, an intuitive connection with yourself, that can really be powerful and meaningful and special. And I will tell you, my friends, there is nothing more important than I've done in my life than to fuse those two tools, spirituality and sobriety. It has made my life, it's just made it better in every way. The other opportunity, which I think is truly, truly special, is a 7-week program that I am launching right now. This is in its 3.0 version. It is my favorite freaking course to teach. And it is a program called Stop Drinking, Start Manifesting. And my friends, this program is truly, truly special. It's very near and dear to my heart. It is the program that I was yearning for, exactly what I would have invested my time and money in 7 years ago when I was looking for a teacher. And Stop Drinking, Start Manifesting is going to be run semi-live this time. So you will get access to join me live for some of the lessons when typically they're pre-recorded. And I know some of you learn better that way. We're starting at the beginning of November 2022. So if you are listening to this beforehand, you can find the links down in the show notes. Or if you want to learn about getting in or getting on the wait list, you can always DM me over on Instagram. But Stop Drinking, Start Manifesting is special because it is not so much focused on the act of giving up alcohol, because I trust if you're like me, it's not so much giving up alcohol, it's having the accountability and the motivation and someone to help you through some pretty intricate mindset shifts. But it is also, what can you do with that out of the way? How can you use that as something even more powerful? And so in this program, we also dive into creating a spiritual connection of your own understanding. And of course, creating manifestation practices that are going to help you call in your dream life. Because from that perspective, you're going to create a life that is so miraculous that alcohol will no longer have a place. Alcohol is going to become insignificant once you create that life, the life like I have built. And let me promise you, there are still stumbling blocks in my life. I just get up off of them more quickly because of all these tools that I put in place. So my aim with this program is to teach you so many of those tools to help you create strength, to help you to get in touch with the voice of the inner self, and release the voice of the ego, and to start manifesting, some tangible manifestation practices that will help you become magnetic to your deepest dreams and desires. And I would love to invite you to participate in this program. It is, again, starting at the beginning of November 2022. Links will be down in the show notes. And it's, as I said, it's my favorite thing to teach. My highest level clients have come through this program, and I have been talking with a couple of them. I'll just give you some really quick manifestations that they brought into their lives. I was on the phone with a client yesterday, and she, within 2 months, went from having the worst job she's ever had in her life. It was draining her dry. Her aura was depleted. She looked and sounded and was at one of her lowest lows. And I've worked with her several times. Within 2 months, she's left that job, received an influx of money, and found another job that was literally waiting for her, that is so much more relaxed, working less, paid more, such a better fit. She is glowing. She is radiant. She is improving. She is getting to step up to her hobbies. She is getting to improve and grow things in her romantic relationship that are freaking miraculous. Her partner is showing up for her. She has a great partner anyway, but her partner is showing up for her even bigger and better, and for their relationship. And both of them are showing up and growing and healing. And every time I'm on the phone with her, I am just smiling ear to ear, because her transformation, the things that she has manifested into her life in literally 2 months, of devoting some time to it, are incredibly miraculous. And I have story after story after story like this. So I won't share them all now, but I want you to know that I put a lot of thought and a lot of effort and a lot of energy and a lot into creating these programs, so that I know that they are going to bring something special into your life and help you grow and stretch into your next version of self. So if what I resonated shares with, what if I resonated with you to wait, what am I trying to say? If what I shared with you resonated today, I would love if you would share this episode, or message me over on Instagram and just let me know. It's so great to hear from you, and so great to know that this show is making an impact in your life. And if you want to hop in on either of those programs, just so you know, Awaken Without Alcohol is a limited series, so you got to get on it fast. And links for both of those will be down in the show notes. And thank you again for tuning in today. It really is important to me to share what I was looking for and how hard it was to find back in the day, 8 whole years ago. But it's also so miraculous because the sobriety space has changed so much. And yet, I can guarantee I'm still the only person offering a program like this. Still, even though sobriety has become something that we're being vulnerable about, this is still the program that I would buy today. This is still the program that I needed. This is still the program that I wanted. Stop Drinking, Start Manifesting is truly unlike anything else I've seen out there. And so if this is speaking to you, I'd love to see you inside. All right, that's it for now. I will catch you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in.